Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a new episode of Pakistan Zindabad. Today's episode, Season 1, Episode 37, is based on an extraordinary and highly sensitive topic: Sacred Sites Protection Force, how Muslim NATO guarantees the security of Islam's holy places. This episode is drawn from the book The Nuclear Umbrella, written by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir. The book clearly explains that when the sacred sites of Islam are under threat, emotions alone are not enough. Systematic, legal, and continuous protection is essential. Today, we will learn how the Sacred Sites Protection Force, operating under the framework of Muslim NATO, safeguards Mecca, Medina, Al-Aqsa, and other holy sites, not merely reactively, but preventively as well.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our channel, Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower. We're starting today by mentioning that this is the 37th episode, based on the book The Nuclear Umbrella, written by Mr. Zahir Ahmad Mir.
It's really good to be here. And honestly, looking at the material we have in front of us today, it feels like one of the most important conversations we've had. We're diving into Volume 4, the Blueprint series, specifically Episode 25.
Exactly. And I think we need to set the stage for you, for everyone listening. Usually when we talk about defense blueprints on this show, we're talking about, hard borders, securing shipping lanes, maybe satellite network.
The logistical stuff, the hardware.
Vital things, absolutely, but they can be a bit abstract. Today is different. Today we are pivoting to something visceral. We're talking about the heart.
That is, I think, the perfect way to put it. Because, look, if you lose a trade route, you lose money, you lose influence. If you lose a border skirmish, okay, you lose territory. But if you lose a holy site, or you allow one to be desecrated...
So it's a different category of loss.
You risk losing the soul of the civilization. It's an existential blow.
And that's what we're digging into, a very specific blueprint for security inside this framework of a Muslim NATO. But we're not talking about general security. We're talking about the Sacred Sites Protection Force, the SSPF.
Right.
And I just want you, our listener, to pause on that for a second. Think about the emotional gravity of that name. Just think about what happens in our world today, right now, when a holy site is threatened.
It's never a local event. It creates a shockwave that goes global in minutes.
It really does. It's not just another security breach. It's an existential crisis. If a military base is attacked, that's an act of war. But if a holy site, a place that defines the spiritual identity for, over 1 billion people, is threatened,
right,
that's different.
It triggers something much deeper. It's an emotional reaction that can ignite conflicts far faster than any political disagreement.
It bypasses the head and goes straight for the gut.
And that is precisely the core idea we're unpacking today. We're looking at the work of Zahir Ahmad Mir, and as you know, he's not just a strategist, he's a constitutional and corporate lawyer.
And I think we need to keep emphasizing that legal background.
It's absolutely crucial because this isn't just a military plan. He's proposing a structural, a legal solution to what has historically been a very emotional and therefore chaotic problem.
Reactive. I think the word is reactive.
Or chaotic. I think your assessment is fair. And the mission for us today in this deep dive is to really explore this SSPF concept. It's a proposal for a permanent, highly specialized force within that Muslim NATO framework.
The whole goal being to move away from what the source calls symbolic concern, where we just issue angry statements after something terrible has already happened.
Right, the condemnations that achieve very little.
And move toward enforceable security, actually being able to do something about it.
Before it happens, that's the key.
So let's get right into the why. Part 1 of our outline here calls it the existential necessity. And I think the starting point has to be this vulnerability gap. The source material is, it's pretty blunt. It says civil policing is just not enough for threats of this magnitude.
It can't be. I mean, you have to look at how the nature of the threat has changed. For centuries, protecting a mosque or a shrine was a local job. You had some local guards, maybe a city watch.
Their job was to stop a pickpocket, maybe handle a small dispute.
Exactly. Keep the peace. But today, we live in an age of asymmetric warfare, of non-state actors, of drone swarms, of ballistic missiles. And more importantly, we live in an age of actors who specifically target symbols to provoke a reaction.
That's the thing, isn't it? They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to start a fire. A local police force is trained to deal with criminals. They aren't equipped or trained to shoot down a sophisticated drone or repel a coordinated commando assault on a pilgrimage site.
No. And the source makes a critical point here. It says, ad hoc responses arrive too late. I mean, think about that. If you wait until the attack is already unfolding on the news to call in the army, the damage is done.
Both the physical damage and the psychological damage.
The psychological damage is arguably worse, because in our digital age, that image of a sacred site being violated, it goes out to billions of people at the speed of light, and the response is immediate.
And that leads directly to this idea of the domino effect that the outline mentions.
Yeah.
This is the part of the research that, frankly, it really put a knot in my stomach. The author argues that an attack on a holy site is never contained. It triggers, and I'm quoting, regional escalation.
It's the perfect analogy, a match in a powder keg. And we have seen this happen time and time again. A provocation at a sensitive site in Jerusalem.
We see it constantly.
A bombing of a shrine in Iraq, an attack on a mosque in South Asia. The event doesn't stay in that city. It leads to protests in Pakistan, riots in Europe. It forces governments in the Gulf to take a side. It mobilizes militias. It can destabilize entire regions.
It's a force multiplier for chaos.
It is. And the enemies of stability, they know this. They understand this vulnerability better than anyone. If you want to weaken a Muslim government, you don't always attack its army. No, you attack a shrine it's supposed to protect.
You make them look incompetent.
Oh.
You prove they can't even protect what is most sacred.
And you provoke their population into a rage that the government then has to deal with. It is a massive, gaping vulnerability in the collective defense of the Muslim world.
So the argument here is that by relying on standard local security, the Muslim world is basically leaving its collective central nervous system exposed to attack.
That is a brilliant analogy. Yes, absolutely. And in that analogy, the SSPF is designed to be the immune system, a professional, proactive one.
The source describes the goal as a mechanism that is professional, neutral, and permanent. Let's break that down. Professional is obvious, they have the skills.
Right, they can handle 21st century threats.
Permanent, meaning they are always there, not just flown in after a crisis starts.
They're on watch, always.
But neutral. That seems like the hardest part. How can a military force be neutral?
That's the core challenge, and it's what we'll get into with the legal framework. But the idea is that they represent the defense of the faith itself, not the narrow political interests of any single government. That's the ambition.
Okay, that idea of neutrality is key, and we'll definitely circle back to the legal side. But first, I want to map this out for everyone. Part 2, the geographic scope. When I first heard Sacred Sites Protection Force, my mind, like I'm sure many others, went straight to Makkah and Medina.
Of course, the heartland.
The absolute core. But this blueprint, it goes so much wider than that, doesn't it?
It does, and this is where you really see the Muslim NATO concept become, pan-Islamic in its vision. Makkah and Medina are the undeniable Tier 1 priorities. That's a given. But the source explicitly, right up front, lists Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem.
Wow. Okay, so let's just pause there. Think about the geopolitical complexity of that one line.
It's immense.
Al-Aqsa is arguably the most sensitive religious site on the planet. It's a constant flashpoint, including that in the mandate of an international Muslim protection force is, well, it's a massive statement of intent.
It is. It signals that the protection of Al-Aqsa is a collective responsibility of the entire civilization, not just a Palestinian issue or a Jordanian one. It effectively internationalizes the security guarantee for that site.
It changes the entire strategic calculus.
Completely. But the list doesn't stop there. The author then includes Najaf and Karbala.
Which is fascinating to me, because that immediately bridges the sectarian divide that has been so destructive.
Precisely. That is not an accidental inclusion. By explicitly naming sites that are deeply, profoundly revered by Shia Muslims, the SSPF is positioning itself as a truly pan-Islamic force. It's making a statement that says, we protect the sacred heritage of Islam, period, full stop.
It steps over the political fault lines.
It attempts to render them irrelevant to the mission. The mission is protection of the sacred, not the politics of the day. And it also mentions Al-Azhar in Cairo, which is a bit different. It's a center of learning, of intellectual heritage.
A civilizational pillar.
Exactly. And then it includes this very broad, very interesting category. Historic mosques and shrines across Africa, Central Asia, and South Asia.
So this is a global mandate. We could be talking about a historic shrine in Timbuktu that's under threat from extremists.
We could. Or a centuries-old mosque in Uzbekistan that's at risk. The idea is that these sites are the shared inheritance of the entire Muslim world. They aren't just national property. They are civilizational assets. If one is destroyed in Mali, a piece of history is lost to someone in Malaysia.
That's a profound reframing of cultural heritage.
Yeah.
But protection in the 21st century, it isn't just a guard at a gate. The source talks about holistic protection. Can you break down what that actually means? Because I'm picturing a fortress, and I don't think that's the feeling you want at a place of worship.
No, and that's the fundamental design challenge. You cannot turn the Grand Mosque into a military bunker. It has to remain a place of peace, of serenity, of welcome. So the protection has to be this multi-layered shield, and most of it has to be invisible to the average pilgrim.
Okay, so what are the layers?
The source lists several distinct domains. First, you have the obvious one, the physical perimeter and access control. That's your gates, your walls, your smart scanners, your vehicle barriers, basic stuff, but done at an elite level.
But then it gets high-tech. It mentions air defense integration.
Right. Protecting the sky above the site. This is absolutely critical now. We've seen missile attacks attempted toward holy cities. Drone warfare has become cheap and ubiquitous. If you can't protect the airspace above the Kaaba or the Dome of the Rock, you simply aren't protecting the site.
And this can't be a crude system. You can't just be firing missiles over a crowd of 1 million people.
Of course not. It requires sophisticated electronic warfare, jamming, directed energy weapons, things that can neutralize a threat without causing collateral damage on the ground. It's surgical.
The next layer is cybersecurity, protecting the digital infrastructure, which, when you think about it, makes perfect sense. Imagine someone hacking the power grid or the water supply of a holy city during Hajj.
Or the crowd management systems. Imagine a malicious actor creating false warnings to trigger a stampede, or simply defacing the digital presence of these institutions to spread propaganda. The digital perimeter is now just as important as the physical wall.
And that leads to the final layer mentioned here, crowd safety. This is often overlooked in military planning, but for these specific sites, the crowd itself can be a biggest vulnerability.
It is. You have millions of people, often elderly, from all over the world in a very confined space. The risk of stampede, a crush, a fire, even a public health crisis, it's immense. So protecting the people within the site is as much a part of the mandate as protecting the site from outside attack.
So it's this 360-degree multi-domain shield. It sounds less like a group of security guards and more like a specialized, almost autonomous branch of a modern military.
That's exactly what it is.
Which brings us perfectly to part 3. The anatomy of the force. The who. Who are these people who are doing all this?
Well, the structural breakdown in the source is very detailed. It's not one, the firefighters, as the outline calls them. And that's the perfect term. The static guards hold the line. But if a perimeter is somehow breached, or if a complex coordinated attack begins at multiple points, the rapid reaction platoons are the mobile strike force. They're the ones who move instantly to intercept, isolate, and neutralize the threat. They are the tip of the spear.
Now, here's the unit that really stood out to me as unique. It's not something you see in any standard military order of battle. Cultural Heritage Security Specialists. That's a fascinating title.
It is, isn't it? And this shows the nuance in Zahir Ahmad Mir's thinking. This is not a blunt instrument. These operators are not just soldiers. They are trained preservationists.
So what do they do?
Their primary job isn't just to stop the bad guy. It's to ensure that in the process of providing security, the priceless, irreplaceable heritage of the site itself isn't damaged. They understand the archaeology, the structural weaknesses of ancient walls, the historical significance of the artifacts they're guarding.
That is so important. You can't have a soldier setting up a heavy machine gun on a 1,200-year-old mosaic floor or drilling into an ancient wall to mount a camera.
Precisely. They are the conscience of the operation. You can think of them as being like the monuments men from World War II, but as a permanent embedded part of the security force, ensuring that the protection doesn't become its own form of destruction.
And finally, the last unit listed, crowd management and disaster response teams.
These are arguably the ones who will be active most often. They are essential for massive events like the Hajj pilgrimage or the Arba'een pilgrimage to Karbala. These are not just security personnel. They're experts in logistics, fluid dynamics, literally the physics of how millions of human bodies move through confined spaces. Their job is to prevent the crush before it even begins to form.
It's interesting how much the source emphasizes the temperament of these personnel. Usually when we talk about elite forces, the focus is all on aggression, on lethality. But here, the language is different.
It has to be. The source highlights that every single person in the SSPF is trained in religious sensitivity and, crucially, de-escalation.
Which is often the opposite of military training.
In many ways, yes. If you're guarding a holy site, you can't be a trigger-happy commando looking for a fight. You're dealing with pilgrims. They are in a state of spiritual vulnerability. They might be elderly, confused, lost, emotional. Your first instinct has to be to help, to calm, to de-escalate. The firearm is the absolute last resort, not the first.
And that ties into a key phrase from the source that seems like a contradiction at first. No site is militarized.
Right. It sounds impossible. We're talking about air defense and rapid reaction teams, but the site isn't militarized.
How does that work?
It means the posture and the atmosphere aren't militarized. You don't want millions of pilgrims to feel like they are entering a war zone or a maximum security prison. The protection is described as discreet, dignified, and proportional.
So, out of sight, out of mind.
Largely. The air defense systems are hidden or disguised. The rapid reaction teams are quartered out of sight, ready to deploy in seconds, but not standing on every corner with rifles. The visible presence, the static guards, is calm, professional, and respectful. The goal is to make the pilgrim feel profoundly safe, but not occupied.
That distinction you just made, safe versus occupied, that is the perfect bridge to part 4.
Yeah.
Sovereignty and law. Because this is the elephant in the room, right?
The biggest political hurdle.
You have this powerful international Muslim NATO force, and you want to put it on the ground in, say, Saudi Arabia or Iraq or Egypt. Aren't you just trampling all over the sovereignty of that host nation? How does an international force operate inside a country without causing a massive political crisis?
And this right here is where the author's background as a constitutional and corporate lawyer becomes the absolute defining feature of the entire blueprint. He hasn't just designed a military unit, he has designed a sophisticated legal and diplomatic framework to make that unit politically acceptable.
Okay, so walk me through it. Is the SSPF just march into a country and take over?
Absolutely not. That would be an invasion. The first and most important pillar of the legal framework is host nation consent. The SSPF only deploys where it is explicitly invited. It is a service that is offered by the alliance, not an imposition.
So it's an opt-in system.
Completely. Think of it less like a foreign army and more like the world's most elite team of consultants. If a country says, "Thank you, but we've got this handled," the SSPF respects that and stands down. But for many nations, admitting they need help with hyper-specialized threats like drone swarms or massive cyber attacks, that's a pragmatic security decision, not a surrender of sovereignty.
Okay, so they're invited in. That's step 1. But once they're on the ground, who gives the orders? Is it the SSPF commander or the local government?
That's the second pillar, joint command. This is critical. The SSPF does not work over local authority. It works with them. It integrates into their command structure. The local police and military still have jurisdiction over the city and the country, while the SSPF has a very specific, narrow mandate to provide specialized protection for that one particular site.
So it's a genuine partnership. A local commander and an SSPF commander would be working out of the same operations center.
Correct. And their relationship is governed by the third pillar. Defined mandates and clear rules of engagement, or ROE. This is all negotiated and written down in a formal agreement before a single SSPF soldier sets foot in the country. There is zero ambiguity.
It spells out exactly when force can be used.
Exactly when, what kind of force, and under whose authority. This prevents the nightmare scenario of an international force going rogue or acting against the host nation's wishes. Everything is pre-approved.
It sounds like the entire legal structure is designed to lower the political temperature, to make it as easy as possible for a country to say yes.
It is. It's a masterclass in political engineering. It allows a host nation to say to its people, "We are bringing in the best specialists from the entire Muslim world to help us protect our sacred heritage," which sounds strong and collaborative. It's a much better message than, "We are letting foreign troops onto our soil." It completely transforms the narrative from intervention to cooperation.
That is a very clever way to frame it. Okay, let's move to part 5. Intelligence and prevention. You said it yourself earlier, the best fight is the one that never happens. How does the SSPF make sure that fight never starts?
Through integrated intelligence. The SSPF isn't an island. It's not working in a vacuum. The blueprint shows it being plugged directly into the main intelligence gathering and analysis system of the entire Muslim NATO alliance. This is what the source calls the watchtower concept.
So it has eyes and ears all over the world. What is it looking for?
It's looking for a whole spectrum of threats. First, the obvious. Threat monitoring for physical attacks, chatter about plots, weapons purchases, troop movements, standard intelligence work.
But it goes deeper than that.
Much deeper. The second thing it's looking for is extremist provocation tracking. This is vital. The system would be monitoring social media, dark web forums, extremist publications, looking for the rhetoric, the incitement, looking for radical elements who are planning to desecrate a site just to get a reaction.
So you're catching them at the planning and propaganda stage before they even buy a plane ticket.
That's the goal. Neutralize the idea before it becomes an action. Third is cyber threat detection. The intelligence wing is constantly scanning for threats to the digital perimeter of these sites and their supporting infrastructure.
And fourth, drone and missile early warning.
Right, this links back to the air defense detachments. You need to see the threat coming from hundreds of miles away, not just when it pops up over the perimeter wall. This requires integration with satellite and long-range radar systems from the entire alliance.
And the source also mentions something fascinating here, crowd safety analytics. Using data to prevent stampedes. How does that work?
This is where security becomes predictive. You're using a network of cameras, AI software, and maybe even anonymous cell phone data to monitor crowd density and flow in real time. The system can detect when the density in a specific courtyard or corridor is approaching a dangerous threshold.
And it sends an alert.
It sends an alert to the command center, which can then take action, maybe close an entrance, open an emergency exit, or make announcements to divert the flow of people before a crush can even start. It's about using data to manage physics proactively.
The core philosophy of this whole section is written right here. Prevention is the primary mission. It really is about getting ahead of the problem.
It has to be. If the rapid reaction platoon has to deploy and use force, that's still a crisis. It means intelligence and prevention have, on some level, failed. The ultimate victory is when the pilgrims have a peaceful, safe experience and never even know a threat was neutralized miles away or hours before.
Okay, this is all making sense. We've covered the why, the where, the who, the rules, and the how. Now, for me, this is the most interesting part. I want to see this thing in action.
Let's do it.
Part 6 of our outline is wargaming the scenarios. The source provides some really specific crisis scenarios to show how the SSPF would actually operate. I think walking through these will make the abstract concrete.
I agree. These scenarios are designed to test the full range of the force's capabilities.
Let's start with the toughest one. Scenario A, threat escalation around Al-Aqsa. This is the geopolitical nightmare we see on the news every few years. Tensions are rising, there's a political dispute, maybe a provocative march is being planned by extremists. The situation is about to boil over. What does the SSPF do?
Okay, so in this scenario, the SSPF's primary role is to be a stabilizer. The first step is internal. They elevate the alert level and harden the perimeter. More guards, more surveillance. But the crucial step is external. They coordinate international observation.
What does that mean exactly? They call the UN.
More direct than that. Because the SSPF is a multinational force with soldiers from Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Indonesia, etc., their very presence brings international eyes directly to that friction point. It's not just a local dispute anymore.
So they aren't just there to fight. They're there to be a credible witness.
Yes. Their presence fundamentally changes the calculus for any aggressor. If a hostile actor wants to storm the compound, they aren't just pushing past local police anymore. They are physically attacking a representative force of the entire Muslim alliance.
That raises the political and military stakes of aggression immensely.
To a global level. The intended outcome here is that escalation is prevented through this combination of physical presence and strategic coordination. They act as a sophisticated high-stakes buffer zone.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to Scenario B, drone threat to Makkah. This is the purely technological threat. A hostile drone, or maybe a swarm of them, approaches the holy city during the Hajj. Maybe it's armed, maybe it's just for propaganda.
This is where the counter-drone detachments earn their keep. The Alliance's early warning intelligence network picks up the threat, let's say, 100 miles out. The local SSPF detachment is alerted, their radars lock on.
And the response?
The response is a quiet electronic intercept. In a city as densely packed as Makkah, especially during Hajj, a kinetic response shooting it down with a missile is the last thing you want. You don't want debris raining down on pilgrims.
So you use electronic warfare.
Exactly. You jam its command signal, you might even hijack its GPS, and you force it to land safely in a designated, unpopulated area outside the city. At the same time, the crowd management teams are alerted just in case, but they likely don't need to do anything.
And the key detail in the source here is incredible. It says the goal is zero disruption to pilgrims.
That is the only metric of success. The millions of pilgrims circling the Kaaba should not even know that a sophisticated aerial attack was attempted and thwarted. The sanctity and peace of the worship is maintained. The bubble of safety remains completely intact. It's high-tech warfare waged silently to protect a moment of pure peace.
Incredible. Scenario C, sectarian provocation near a shrine. Let's say this is in a volatile region with a history of sectarian tension. A flashpoint event occurs. Maybe inflammatory graffiti is sprayed on a wall, or a small but aggressive protest starts, threatening to turn into a riot between two groups.
This is a classic spark in the powder keg situation, and this is where the SSPF's unique composition is its greatest strength. The first move comes from the Rapid Reaction Unit. Within minutes, they deploy and physically isolate the incident. They create a cordon, separating the hostile groups.
So they contain the fire.
They contain the fire. But then the de-escalation teams move in, and this is key. They don't go in with rifles raised. They engage verbally, and they leverage the unique authority of the SSPF.
What do you mean by that?
A local police force might be seen as biased by one sect or the other, but the SSPF team is composed of soldiers from all over the Muslim world, from different backgrounds. They can approach the groups and say with genuine authority, we are not on one side or the other. We are the guardians of this shrine, and we protect it for everyone. Disperse.
That's a powerful moral and religious argument, not just a security order.
It is. It reframes the situation. It cuts the legs out from under the provocateurs who want to make it a sectarian fight. The outcome is that the conflict is contained and de-escalated locally rather than being allowed to spread and become a regional crisis.
Okay, one final scenario. Scenario D, stampede or disaster risk. This is the non-combat threat, a huge crowd, potential for a crush.
Here, the enemy isn't a person. The enemy is physics and panic. The crowd safety analytics system would have hopefully given an early warning, but if a dangerous situation develops suddenly, the response is immediate and drilled to perfection. The disaster response teams instantly open pre-planned emergency corridors to relieve pressure.
They're not figuring it out on the fly.
Never. It's all been rehearsed. At the same time, medical units, which are already embedded around the perimeter, are deployed to the area. There is no delay waiting for ambulances to get through the crowd. The response shifts from panic to a calm, well-rehearsed protocol. Casualties are minimized through logistics and planning.
You know, hearing these scenarios laid out step by step, it really drives home the difference between just hoping for safety and actually engineering it.
That is the fundamental shift this blueprint represents. It's a system, not a wish.
So let's bring this all together in our conclusion. We are looking at what the source calls a historic shift, from a state of vulnerability to guaranteed protection.
It's a maturation of defense strategy for the whole civilization. For so long, the defense of these sacred sites was left to emotion. If something bad happened, people would get angry, they would protest, there would be outrage. But outrage doesn't stop a drone. Anger doesn't prevent a cyber attack. Anger doesn't stop a stampede.
It's a reaction, not a defense.
Exactly. The SSPF represents the realization that faith and the symbols of faith must be defended by competence, by professionalism, by technology, and by strategic unity.
There's a powerful quote that closes this section of the source material, and it really stuck with me. It says, Muslim NATO ensures that faith is defended not by anger, but by preparedness.
That's the entire argument in one sentence. Anger is reactive, preparedness is proactive. Anger is chaotic, preparedness is structured. This blueprint is about taking the most sensitive, most volatile aspect of the Muslim world, its shared holy sites, and wrapping them in a layer of profound, predictable stability.
And looking forward, the implications go beyond just protecting stones and buildings, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. This is a blueprint for regional, even global stability. If you can successfully secure these flashpoints, you remove one of the most reliable triggers for regional war. You lower the political temperature of the entire geopolitical landscape. By guaranteeing the safety of the holy places, you are making a massive investment in peace.
It transforms the defense of Islam from being a purely emotional reaction into a strategic capability. That is a really profound thought.
It is. It challenges everyone to think about what becomes possible when you apply elite professional strategy to our most sacred problems.
And that brings us to our final provocative thought for you today. I want to ask you, the listener, to really consider this. If this force, the Sacred Sites Protection Force, existed today, if it was fully funded, trained, and deployed right now, how many historical tragedies from the last few decades could have been avoided?
How many recent tensions, the ones we see in the news right now, would be non-issues? how many wars might never have started?
It's a heavy question.
It is, but it's worth asking.
Think about the difference between wishing for safety and actually engineering it. That is what this blueprint is all about.
Absolutely, a powerful idea to end on.
That is all the time we have for this deep dive. As always, thank you for listening to Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll continue to unpack these incredible strategic blueprints.
Until next time.